Catcher in the Rye. Setting. The novel takes place in 3 days of December in the 1950s in Edgertown, Pennsylvania, and New York City. You can see that it takes place in that time, in the 1950s, because of the division of the schools. The boys and girls have separate schools. You also have a feeling of the time because Holden only has $185, and it shows that the value of the money was much higher then compared to now. The setting is described detailed in the novel. That is clear because the book only takes place over 3 days. It is conveyed through direct description because it is a first-person narrator, as we hear things from Holden's point of view, and he is speaking directly about himself. The setting does create a special atmosphere by the way Holden describes the story and also by the things Holden does in the novel. For instance, the girl always reject him. He lives in his own, and he lives on his own, and he doesn't want to meet with his parents. It makes the reader kind of feel sorry for Holden that he doesn't get his things together with regards to moving school all the time and so on. Holden is only 16, but he kind of does what he wants to do. He goes on hotel, drinks alcohol, smokes cigarettes, and so on. And that also shows the reader what kind of person Holden is. He gets kicked out of the schools and doesn't know what to do with himself.
Narration point of view, Martin. The Catcher in the Rye through a first-person point of view. We have two narrators of the event that takes place in the book. The first is the 7-year-old Holden, who tells the story as a recollection, and the second is the 16-year-old Holden, who does all the taking. The form of narration is first person, in which a character uses I to relate his events from perspective, as also you can see in the example page 1, sentence 30. Where I want to start is the day I left Princip Prep. The first person narrator is Holden Caulfield, as we are following his description of what we sees and experiences. However, Holden is not wholly reliable in his understanding and reporting of events. At first, his youth, a young boy of 16 who does not have a lot of experience in living, and second, he is extremely depressed during the 2.5 days he's on his own in New York, and his mood changes a lot there. The third one is where Holden tells his story through flashbacks, and the memory is never so good. Because of these things, the reader has to make some assumptions and perform some interpretation of the story on the story.
Holden. Holden is the narrator and protagonist of the story. He is in a sanitarium located in California when he tells the story. He's 17 years old, but he's 16 in the story he tells. He goes to a private school called Princip Prep, but he's being kicked out for failing 4 classes. He does not want his family to know because it's the 4th school he's being kicked out of. In the beginning of the story, he sets out to become something in his life because he's tired of going to school. He goes to New York, which is his hometown. He rents a hotel room because he doesn't want to go home to the family. He wants to be a catcher in the rye because he thinks it's a noble thing to be. Phoebe is the sister of Holden. She's 17 years old and she's Holden's most trusted family member and friend. She's good at dealing with problems and she's ready to run away together with Holden as soon as she hears about it. She helps change Holden's mind in the end. Sonny is a prostitute who comes to Holden's hotel room She's ready to go into the action, but Holden doesn't feel comfortable and rejects her. DB. DB is Holden's big brother. Holden tells the story to DB in the mental institution. Holden is kind of mad at DB for selling all his work, for being a sellout to Hollywood, though he once was, in Holden's eyes at least, a great story writer. Holden looks up to DB for having some of the good short stories he wrote and for having control over his life. Ali. Ali is Holden's younger brother. He died 3 years before the story. Holden speaks to Ali when he needs help solving problems.
The story starts with an introduction. The story starts with an introduction which captures the reader's interest. The important characters are introduced gradually throughout the whole story, and at the end of the novel, Holden changes his attitude and his point of view. And even if the ending is open, it still raises a lot of unanswered questions. And it's the 17-year-old Holden who tells the story in flashback.
Yes, the language. The language is colloquial and informal. It sounds like a real 17-year-old teenager is talking direct to you, because we speak same language. He says multiple times, "You have liked Ellie," like you're sitting right next to him. He also uses phrases like bastard and goddamn cab, as you can see in this example, and when he uses words like these, it creates an informal environment and kind of a slang language. And another example. In this example and also in the first example, you can see how he uses the word phonies. A word he uses repeatedly through the novel, and as you can see in both examples, is phonies. It means you're kind of a fake person, and Holden uses critically at the surroundings and environment. And in the first example you saw before, he says he had to meet a bunch of phonies for cocktails, he said. I could see them all sitting around in some bar with their goddamn checkers West, criticizing shows and books and women in those tired, snobby voices. They kill me, those guys. So he uses the word phonies to describe a certain social culture. And when we're looking at the tone in the novel is a mix of depressed, nostalgic, and disgusted tone. It kind of builds up this mood, because in the start the tone is most disgusted against the people he's surrounded by, and then the tone becomes more and more depressed as Holden develops as a person throughout the novel. And as you can see in this example, he also says, "Depressed and all, I almost wished I was dead," and he uses this word depressed multiple times throughout the novel, and it creates